was walking home during a late-night thunderstorm, the kind where the sky splits open every few seconds. But something was wrong. Every time lightning flashed, I saw a silhouette behind me. Not close, not far, just standing perfectly still. I walked faster. Another flash, the silhouette moved closer. Flash, even closer. By the time I reached my house, I was shaking. I shut the door, locked it, turned around. Flash. The silhouette was now inside my living room, standing inches away, its face completely blank. The lights went out. The thunder stopped, and I realized the lightning hadn't been following me. It was showing me what was coming. Have you ever had that feeling? That prickly sensation on the back of your neck, like you're being watched? For me, it wasn't a feeling. It was a reality. And what was watching me wasn't a person. It was the sky itself. It all started on a family camping trip in the Rockies. I was maybe 12 years old. The day was perfect. Crystal clear blue skies. Not a cloud in sight. I decided to hike up to a small ridge overlooking our campsite. It was a short climb, and the view was breathtaking. As I sat there, a single, dark cloud appeared out of nowhere, seemingly right above me. It was strange, but I didn't think much of it until the first flash. It wasn't a distant rumble. It was a blinding white spear of light that struck a pine tree not 50 feet from where I sat. The sound was deafening, a crack that vibrated through my bones. I scrambled back down to the campsite, heart pounding, convinced I'd just had a close call. My parents chalked it up to the unpredictable mountain weather. I wish it had been that simple. A few years later, high school, I was at a football game, cheering with my friends under the Friday night lights. The air was a bit humid, but the forecast was clear. Midway through the third quarter, the sky directly over the stadium began to darken. People joked about it, but I felt a familiar cold dread. Then, a bolt of lightning hit one of the light towers at the far end of the field. Sparks rained down. The game was immediately canceled, and everyone ran for cover. My friends were buzzing with excitement about the crazy event. I just stood in the rain, knowing this was no coincidence. The lightning had found me again. This pattern continued. A beach vacation in Florida. A sudden, violent thunderstorm materializes over my spot on the sand. A cross-country road trip. A singular, terrifying bolt strikes the road just ahead of my car, leaving a smoking crater in the asphalt. I started to become a recluse. I avoided open spaces. I obsessively checked weather forecasts, and I lived in a constant state of anxiety. People around me thought I was just being paranoid, that I had some kind of weird storm phobia. How could I explain that the storms weren't random? That they were for me? I even saw a therapist who gently suggested it was a form of PTSD from that first childhood incident. But I knew it was more than that. The lightning felt personal, intentional. I dove into research, spending countless nights online, digging through obscure meteorological forums, folklore, and fringe science websites. I learned about things like positive lightning, supercharged bolts that can strike miles away from the parent storm, and theories about human bioelectricity and its potential to interact with atmospheric conditions. Most of it was pseudoscience, but it was all I had. I started to wonder, was I some kind of human lightning rod? Was there something about my body's electrical field that was attracting these strikes? It sounded insane. But what was the alternative? That I was just the unluckiest person on Earth. One day, I stumbled upon an article about a research group studying atmospheric electrical phenomena in New Mexico. Desperate, I wrote them a long, rambling email, detailing every single incident. I expected no reply, or maybe a polite dismissal. To my complete shock, a lead scientist, a Dr. Eerie, replied within hours. He didn't call me crazy. He said my story, while extreme, aligned with certain outlier data points and theoretical models they were exploring. He invited me to their research facility. It was a terrifying decision to willingly go to a place where they studied the very thing that haunted me. But what choice did I have? Living in fear wasn't living at all. So, went. The facility was in the middle of nowhere, a collection of domes and antenna arrays under the vast desert sky. Dr. Thorne and his team were welcoming, treating me not as a nutcase, but as a scientific anomaly. They ran tests, monitored my biometric data, and waited. For 3 days, nothing happened. The sky remained a perfect, boring blue. I started to feel foolish, like I had imagined everything. Then, on the 4th afternoon, it happened. The alarms in the lab started blaring. On the monitors, a small but intensely charged weather system was forming directly over the facility, appearing from absolutely nothing. Dr. Thorne looked at me, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and scientific exhilaration. "It's here," he said. "It followed you." They hustled me into a specially designed observation dome, a Faraday cage that would protect me. Through the reinforced glass, I watched as the sky turned a bruised purple. The air crackled with energy, and then it began. A ballet of electric fury, bolt after bolt of lightning striking the ground all around the facility, drawn to the arrays they had set up. It was the most terrifying and beautiful thing I had ever seen. And for the first time, I wasn't running. I was watching. They were collecting data, measuring the storm's unique properties, and for the first time, getting quantifiable proof of the phenomenon that had plagued my life. I don't have all the answers yet, and my life is far from normal. I still work with Dr. Thorne's team, a living, breathing subject in one of the strangest scientific studies imaginable. But the fear is gone, replaced by a sense of purpose. I'm no longer the boy who was haunted by the lightning. I'm the man who is helping to understand it. The sky still watches me, but now, I'm watching it back. The storm was so strong that my radio kept switching on and off, crackling, buzzing, static. At 2:47 a.m., during a huge thunderclap, the radio turned on by itself and I heard a whisper, "Don't open the curtains." I froze. The voice kept repeating it, louder each time, as if panicking. Then the storm went dead silent. No thunder. No rain. Everything was still. Against the voice's warning, I slowly opened the curtains. Lightning exploded across the sky, and standing there, inches from the window, was a pale figure with a wide grin and completely black eyes. The radio whispered one last time, "You shouldn't have looked." Have you ever been alone, surrounded by silence, only for a strange noise to cut through it? Maybe it was the hum of an old refrigerator, or the static from a disconnected radio. But what if, in that static, you heard a voice that shouldn't be there? This isn't just a scene from a horror movie. It's a phenomenon people have reported for decades, known as electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP. It's the idea that spirits, or some otherworldly intelligence, can manipulate electronic devices to communicate with us. The story of EVP really starts in the 1920s with none other than Thomas Edison. He believed it might be possible to build a machine to communicate with the dead. He theorized that life, like matter, could not be destroyed, and that personalities might persist after death. He speculated that if these personalities were subtle enough, they might be able to influence an equally subtle recording device. While he never built his spirophone, the idea planted a seed. Fast forward to the late 1950s. A Swedish painter and film producer named Fredrik Jurgensen was recording bird songs in the countryside. When he played back the tape, he was shocked. Amidst the chirping of the birds, he heard a man's voice, speaking in Norwegian, discussing nocturnal bird songs. He assumed it was a stray radio signal. But then, on another recording, he heard a voice he recognized all too well as deceased mother. She called him by his childhood nickname and said, "Friedel, my little Friedel, can you hear me?" This moment changed his life. He dedicated the rest of his years to capturing these voices, amassing thousands of recordings. His work inspired others, like a Latvian psychologist named Dr. Konstantin Rodive refined Jurgensen's methods, conducting experiments in a controlled, soundproof lab. He would turn on a tape recorder connected to a diode, a simple crystal radio receiver not tuned to any station, and record the resulting static. When he played it back at high volume, he heard faint, whispering voices. These Rodive voices as they came to be known, were typically short, rhythmic, and often spoke in a mix of languages. Skeptics were quick to dismiss them. They argued it was just auditory pareidolia brain's tendency to find patterns, like voices, in random noise, the same way we see faces in clouds, or shapes in wood grain. Or maybe it was cross-modulation, stray radio broadcasts being accidentally picked up by the recording equipment. But the phenomenon persisted with the dawn of the digital age. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators traded in their bulky tape recorders for digital ones. These devices were less susceptible to radio interference, yet the voices continue to appear on recordings. Today, you can find countless examples online. People use spirit boxers or ghost boxers, devices that rapidly scan through radio frequencies to generate a bed of white noise, hoping a voice will use the snippets of sound to form words. The results are often eerie and, for believers, undeniable proof of life after death. Skeptics, however, remain unconvinced. They point out that the human brain is an incredible pattern recognition machine. When we re-primed to hear something, when we in a spooky place, actively listening for a ghost, our brain can easily stitch together random.
During a violent storm, the power went out in my house. I lit a candle and sat near the window to watch the rain. A lightning bolt hit nearby, bright, white, blinding. And in that split-second flash, I saw a man standing outside my window, staring directly at me. He wasn't holding an umbrella. He wasn't reacting to the storm. He was completely dry, as if the rain wasn't touching him. I froze. Another flash, he was gone. I tried to calm myself, thinking I imagined it. But then my phone buzzed. A notification. Check your front door camera. I opened the feed. And in the darkness, illuminated only by the distant lightning, the same man was standing at my front door, this time smiling. For weeks, an old man stood at his window, just watching. Day in and day out, he was there. The neighbors started to get a little creeped out. What was he staring at? Was he casing their houses? Was he lonely? Angry? The theories started to fly, getting wilder by the day. But no one dared to ask him. No one even knew his name. He was just the man at the window, a silent, unsettling fixture in their otherwise peaceful neighborhood. Until one day, he wasn't there. The window was empty, and that's when the real mystery began. Let's rewind a bit. This all started in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone's business, or at least they think they do. The man, whose name was Arthur, had lived in that house for over 40 years. He'd seen kids grow up and move away, new families move in, and the neighborhood change around him. He and his wife Eleanor had been pillars of the community. They hosted the best summer barbecues and gave out the biggest candy bars on Halloween. But then Eleanor passed away. The house fell silent. The vibrant garden she'd tended with so much love began to wither, and Arthur retreated. He became a ghost in his own home. The neighbors would see him occasionally, a fleeting shadow getting the mail, but he never spoke, never waved. And then he appeared at the window. From sunrise to sunset, he stood in the living room, his silhouette framed by the curtains. He wasn't looking at his phone or reading a book. He was just watching. The kids playing street hockey, Mrs. Gable walking her poodle, the mailman making his daily rounds. Arthur watched it all with an unreadable expression. People started locking their doors a little earlier. They'd pull their blinds down, feeling his gaze on them. Whispers turned into complaints at the neighborhood association meeting. "He's making us uncomfortable," someone said. "It's invasive," another added. They talked about calling the police for a wellness check, but it never felt like a serious enough reason. Then came the day the window was empty. At first, it was a relief. The feeling of being watched was gone. But as one day turned into two, and then a week, relief turned to concern. The mail started piling up on his doorstep. The lawn grew shaggy. The silence from the house was no longer peaceful. It was ominous. Finally, Sarah, who lived next door and had known Arthur and Eleanor since she was a little girl, decided she had to do something. Gathering her courage, she walked over and knocked on the door. No answer. She peered through the mail slot, calling his name. Nothing. Worried, she called the non-emergency police line. An officer arrived and, after getting no response, forced the door open. Sarah's heart pounded as they stepped inside. The house was dusty and still filled with the scent of old memories. They found Arthur in his armchair, not by the window, but facing it. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep. On the small table beside his chair was a photo album open to a picture of Eleanor, young and vibrant, laughing in their front yard. And next to it was a letter. The officer let Sarah read it. In his shaky handwriting, Arthur explained everything. He wasn't watching the neighbors. He was watching the big oak tree in his front yard. It was the tree he and Eleanor had planted together on their first anniversary. He wrote about how watching the leaves change, seeing the birds build nests in its branches, and watching the kids play under its shade made him feel connected to her. He was reliving their life together, one memory at a time, through that window. He wasn't looking out at the world, he was looking back at his. The neighborhood was stunned into silence. Their fear and suspicion were replaced by a wave of shame and sadness. They had been so wrong. They saw a creepy old man, not a grieving husband, clinging to his last connection to the love of his life. In the end, the man at the window wasn't a threat. He was just a man, holding onto a memory framed by a window that looked out on a world that had misunderstood him completely.